Hey everyone, Firegross here, and today we're going to be talking about Blight-Ravaged maps. So I just finished running a little over 200 Blight-Ravaged maps. Originally it started off because I just wanted to fund a 500x reroll to Arakali's Fang, but in the end I decided I would gather some useful data for the community and we would sort of figure out how profitable Blight-Ravaged maps were versus regular Blight maps, and just in general, like whether it was a strategy that was worth running or something, to be relegated to the people who are AFK farming it with bots. Now, Blight-Ravaged maps ended up being pretty damn profitable. I would rate it probably in the top, 5 or 6 strategies available to us at the moment. However, there are a few really major drawbacks, and if you don't know what you're doing and you don't know how to optimize these maps, it's very possible that you end up wasting a lot of money and a lot of time. Now, I've seen some disappointment within the community about Blight-Ravaged maps versus regular Blight maps, and a lot of that has to do with people just not understanding what the trade-offs are and whether they should be doing Blight maps versus Ravaged maps, so we're going to talk about that. Okay, so the main differences are 200% more monster life and 25% more movement speed in Blight-Ravaged maps compared to normal Blight maps. Now, as you can see here, I have written 250 and 25% respectively. Now, that's because these modifiers go onto the map. They're affected by Awakening bonus. Now, if your Atlas is mostly completed like mine is, you have 25% Awakening bonus. I believe you can actually get this to 28 or 29%, so it can go even higher, but for me, it's 250% more monster life and 25% more movement speed. And this makes Blight-Ravaged maps several times harder than Blight maps, okay? Like, just at a baseline level, these are much harder, right? You can have a build that can just AFK farm Blight maps, and it will crumble in Blight-Ravaged maps, okay? So these are two entirely different tiers of content, don't be fooled. Now, the next difference is higher monster level. Okay, so Blight-Ravaged maps are pretty much tier 18, I believe. It doesn't matter whether it's a tier 14 or tier 16, the monster level is fixed at 85, and that means it's basically a tier 18 map, okay? And the differences in terms of the unique boss life, the base life rather, is 16 to 66%, depending on whether you're comparing to a tier 14 non-Ravaged map or a tier 16 non-Ravaged map, okay? Now, the final two differences are that Blight-Ravaged maps can have 9 annoyance on them instead of 3. Now, this is the biggest deal, and we're going to talk about that more later. And then the final one is that Strangle Gasp can drop from a Blight-Ravaged map. Now, before we move on to anything else in the video, I'm just going to say Strangle Gasp is really fucking rare, okay? I did over 200 of these Blight-Ravaged maps. I've spoken and, gotten data from a bunch of other people that have done hundreds of Blight-Ravaged maps. No one has dropped one, right? Of all the people I've spoken to, none of us have seen Strangle Gasp drop, and now, the common belief is that it's tied to bosses, and you can do certain annoyance on the Blight-Ravaged maps in order to spawn more bosses, and I believe you can roughly double the rate at which Strangle Gasp will drop. So if Strangle Gasp is 1 in 1,000 maps, by doing the Blight boss anointment, you can get it in, 500 maps or whatever, but it's really damn rare, and you should not do this content with the intention of dropping a Strangle Gasp. Strangle Gasp is just a nice bonus that's going to happen, and if it happens, well, you're going to make a lot of money on that day, but it's probably not going to happen, so don't do it with the intention of getting a Strangle Gasp. So you're probably wondering why I'm not talking about the difference in rewards. There are none. Yep, there are none. I think, and I say this only anecdotally, I should have tested for this and I didn't, but I think that Blight-Ravaged maps drop a few extra oils compared to normal Blight maps, and that's probably to make up for the fact that Blight-Ravaged maps can't drop other Blight-Ravaged maps, whereas regular Blight maps can drop Ravaged maps. So, and that's just, it's anecdotal and it makes sense if you think about it like that, but other than that, all the drops are pretty much the exact same between the two maps, right? So, where does the difference in rewards come from? Well, just from the anoints, right? The anoints are literally the only difference between the two in terms of, how you're deriving extra currency from these maps. But it's okay, because Blight-Ravaged maps only cost about 20C compared to Blight maps costing 15C. So, for the cost of 4 Blight maps, you can get 3 Blight-Ravaged maps, and that you're fitting in so much extra currency from the annoyance, which a lot of people really underestimate, but yeah, you're fitting in so much extra currency that you can derive a much higher, like, you can get way more profit per hour from doing Ravaged maps compared to normal Blight maps, only as long as you know what you're doing with the annoyance. So we'll talk more about the annoyance in a second. I'm just going to talk about the DPS requirements of Blight maps versus Ravaged maps. This is also a pretty big deal, and it's really crucial that you understand this before you go and do the content yourself, because otherwise you're gonna buy up a bunch of Blight-Ravaged maps, you're gonna fail them, you're gonna be wondering, hey, what the hell's going on? Okay, so if you are running with a non-teal strategy, your a Blight-Ravaged map compared to just a normal tier 14 non-Ravaged map requires 7.3 times the amount of DPS. Now, this is taking into account the extra movement speed the monsters have, the extra life, the extra area level, all that sort of stuff. Now, obviously this isn't exact, and with the Tau strategy that we're going to talk about, that's going to definitely alleviate a lot of the DPS requirement, but keep in mind that as much as we are going to cheese the absolute living hell out of Blight monsters with the Tau strategy, there's still things that are seismic immune, and there's still things that are going to get through your cheesy strategy, and if you don't have this kind of DPS requirement, well, that one pack of mobs that ends up getting through, it's going to kill your pump, right? Like, there is no room for error here, really. You really, really, really need to have a really juiced out character, right? So, if you're struggling, if you're doing, like, Alked and Corrupted Blight maps, and you're only barely completing the map, if you want to move up to a Ravaged Blight map, you need, 7.3 times the amount of DPS, right? That's just to give you an idea of how they're different. Now, if you're running the teal strategies for Blight-Ravaged maps, and in a lot of cases you should, well, these are the numbers over here, right? So, if you're struggling with a tier 14 non-Ravaged map, and you want to move into triple teal Blight-Ravaged maps, you need 14 times the DPS. It's a big deal, right? Like, a lot of you guys just forget about doing this, right? I will talk about how you're going to make currency from Blight maps, instead of Blight-Ravaged maps a little later on, quite soon, in fact. But yeah, don't just expect to go from doing normal Blight maps to Blight-Ravaged maps. It's not a small increase in difficulty. It's a massive jump. It's a massive jump, right? If you really need to have a very good character to be doing this content. And if you don't, just keep doing Blight maps, right? We're gonna get into all that. I'm gonna discuss, how to do all that, whether it's worth doing Blight maps instead. And in a lot of cases it is, but yeah. Have a good character, or just don't do Blight-Ravaged maps. Okay, so this video doesn't go on for 2 hours. We're not gonna sit here going through spreadsheets. I'm just gonna give you the abridged version of the rewards, okay? So, and keep in mind, massive amounts of variance in the rewards here, right? Like, massive amounts, okay? I did 200 maps, and it's entirely possible that if I did another 200, all these numbers would be totally different, right? And looking at other people's data, I have crowdsourced some extra data to add to my own, and it is massively different, right? And we use the same methodology, we use the same annoyance. It's just, there's a lot of variance, and you have to keep that in mind, that even though I did 200 Blight-Ravaged maps, and it took me almost a week to do, that's still not enough to get you accurate, numbers. But we're going to do the best we can, obviously, so here's what it is, right? So you can expect roughly 1 in 10 maps, you're going to get 1 Tainted Oil, 1 Golden Oil, and 1 Exalted Orb, okay? I have been told, and judging by the data I've seen from other people, apparently I got a little lucky on the Tainted Oils. Other people seem to be getting closer to 1 in 15, 1 in 20. I have seen one data set where someone was getting 1 in 7. So, of course, with stuff this rare, it will average out over thousands and thousands of maps, but this is, what I got, so this is all I can tell you I got, right? So yeah, every 10 maps you can expect to get 1 Tainted Oil, 1 Golden Oil, 1 Exalted Orb on average. You can expect to get a Silver Oil every 3 to 4 maps on average, or rather about, 3 to 4 Silver Oils every 10 maps. You can expect about 3 to 4 Chaos Orbs per map on average. Again, these are averages, right? You may get some maps where you're getting like 10 Chaos Orbs, and some where you get none. And then Stack Decks is getting about 5 on average. Now, again, you don't get Stack Decks every map, but some of the times that you do get Stack Decks, you get like up to 15 in a map. So, but yeah, it averaged out to about 5 Stack Decks per map overall. And these 6 are where the large bulk of your currency gains come from. So just these things are where you're going to make most of your money. And if I had to put add a 7th thing to the list, I would say big ticket div cards. So over the course of 200 maps, I dropped 3 nurses, surprisingly. I dropped a bunch of Exalted Orb div cards, right? Saint's Treasure, the Hoarder, etc. There are other people who were dropping Doctors and Demons and stuff like that, so it seems that the the rarity of rare div cards is a lot higher when doing blight maps compared to pretty much every other type of content in the game. Not confirmed, but that definitely seems to be the case. And with the amount of big ticket div cards I did drop, I think it's worth mentioning that you can expect over time to drop one or two of these, and that's going to definitely add a large amount of profit to your totals. This is where we're going to get into the nitty-gritty of the video. I'm not going to include the full spreadsheet containing the full breakdown of all of the drops that I got over the 200 maps, and the reason for that is, quite frankly, it's very messy, and I don't want to take the couple of hours required to tidy it up and make it presentable. But most of you guys probably caught a lot of this farming on stream, so you know what happened. I'm not making it up or anything like that. Now, this list is a full breakdown of the cost and the profit of each type of strategy. For those who are wondering, I did only 4 strategies. I did basically Amber Teal plus Violet, Amber Teal plus Crimson, Amber Teal plus Opalescent, and then just Amber Teal as a control, so we could figure out how much, money is being made baseline from Blight-Ravaged maps without the other anointments. And obviously the reason for Amber Teal is Teal makes it go faster and Amber makes it a little easier. And so I then extrapolated the numbers for all the different other types of strategies by sort of figuring out how much money does, Crimson add to a Blight-Ravaged map, how much money does Opal add, etc. You're probably wondering why there are a lot of oils not mentioned here. Obviously there are a lot of type of oils, silver, gold, black, etc. Those oils aren't worth it, right? I ran 5 to 10 of each of them, and it was very clear right from the get-go that they were costing a lot of money and not really making it worth our time, even remotely, right? I think black and gold had some of the worst return in terms of the cost. Running them, they were just actively lowering the profit per hour compared to just not running them. I think it was Indigo. Is Indigo the boss one? Whichever one's the boss one was not really increasing the profit per hour very significantly, so the boss ones gave me a few extra Blight uniques. Now, funny thing, I dropped something like only 7 Blight uniques in all of this testing. Turns out Blight uniques are pretty rare, not just the Strangle Gasp, everything's rare. But I definitely saw most of those Blight uniques when I was testing out the Blight bosses one, where you can spawn a Blight boss in every lane. But it wasn't really worth it, especially not for the level of difficulty it was adding to the Blight maps. Now, when I was doing the Blight bosses in every lane, I failed a few of those, right? More than I definitely feel comfortable doing, so just wouldn't recommend them. Okay, so we're only going to focus on the oils that I think are relevant, and even Violet isn't really relevant, but it's being included here just so you can sort of see a comparison. Now, I've made a tier list, which is sorted by the profitability of each strat, but here is the summarized tier list, which is pretty much the only strategies that I feel are relevant. So why are these the only relevant ones? Well, quite frankly, because now, Opal is the best strategy for regular Blight maps based off my limited testing. Some people, like to contend that it's Teal, but my results seem to show it's Opal, and some of the results I crowdsourced from other people showed it was Opal too. Okay, so it's about 4.7 profit, exalts profit per hour if you're farming regular Blight maps using Opal anoints, like triple Opal on all your maps. And this is obviously, trivial in terms of its difficulty. It's just a regular Blight map. You can pretty much do it AFK. If you're playing a minion build, you can do it AFK, right? And that's how people have been doing it for, several leagues now. And what that means is that in order for Blight-Ravaged maps to be worth it, they need to be yielding a higher profit per hour than your Opal Blight maps, right? So Opal Blight maps fit in here in the B tier, and as you can see, running Amber, Clear, and Opal yields only 4.4 exalts profit per hour. There's no point in doing a Blight-Ravaged map where you're paying more money and you're making it much harder for yourself and it's potentially a little stressful if it's going to yield lower profit per hour than just running regular Blight maps, right? And same thing all the way down here. If you're running Amber, Clear, or Sepia Oil on your Blight-Ravaged maps, you're earning only 2.7 exalts per hour. Now, I saw a lot of videos from other content creators, and not to call anyone out here, because, a lot of these other content creators were just trying to, provide data, and we're figuring out the content, right? And, they were doing it in early days, so this isn't in any way a criticism of other content creators, but it's just worth discussing. A lot of other content creators were saying, okay, so you want to run your Blight-Ravaged maps with Amber, Clear, Sepia Oils, because that makes them easiest to do. It does make them easiest to do, but it's not worth doing, right? Because the only point of doing Blight-Ravaged maps is that we're getting 9 anoints to make it more rewarding. If you're spending those 9 anoints making it, easy to run, why would you put amber, clear, and sepia oils on a Blight-Ravaged map for 2.7 exalts per hour when you can just run regular Blight maps at 4.7 exalts profit per hour with triple opal oils, right? That's 4.7 exalts profit per hour. That's after you've invested the opals onto every map you run, right? So all of these strategies underneath here are totally irrelevant, right? The minimum strategy you want to run if you're going to be doing Blight-Ravaged maps is Amber, Crimson, and Opal, and even that's kind of on the fence, right? If you're running Amber, Crimson, Opal, you're only making, 0.3 exalts per hour profit over the Opal maps. I don't know if that's worth it, right? You're making your maps a lot harder, and you're only getting 0.3 of an exalt extra profit per hour. That means after 3 hours, you still haven't made 1 extra exalt off the strategy, but you are inviting the possibility of failure in, you're making it a lot more stressful. It's a lot harder to just sort of AFK and watch Netflix while you're doing the maps. So, this strategy here, I don't know. The main 2 strats that it's really worth talking about and going to be worth your time is Amber, Teal, and Opal, and then Crimson, Teal, and Opal. Now, these are much harder to run, okay? So, and we'll talk about them individually. So, Amber, Teal, Opal. Now, Amber is really important. We haven't really discussed it. Now, the reason you're going to be doing triple Amber is because that's going to give you 60% reduced cost of buildings. With Awakener bonus at 75% reduced cost, that means you get to build 4 times as many towers as, what you can run without Amber, right? So, putting 3 Amber oils on your map, you get to run 4 times as many towers. If you run 2 Amber oils, you're getting 40% reduced cost of towers. With Awakening bonus, that gets bumped up to 50% reduced cost of towers. That's still only half as many towers as with 3 Amber oils. So the jump between 2 Amber oils to 3 Amber oils is basically doubling the amount of towers you get. And that's important if you're thinking of maybe like, okay, I'm going to do 2 Amber oils and, maybe chuck in a Crimson or something like that. It's not really worth the the few extra lucky chests you're going to get in order to lose half of your towers, basically, is what I'm saying. If you're going to be doing Amber oils onto your maps to make it easier, you probably just want to go for all 3, because if you've accepted that you need the Amber oils in order to do the map, just go all 3, right? Just make it... It's worth investing up to 3 at that point, because you get it sort of scales exponentially. The value of 3 versus the value of 2 is just huge. There's no point going 2, right? Just go 3. Okay. So, that's why you would run 3 Amber, but then you're going to run Teal and Opal. Now, Opal obviously doesn't make the map harder, but Teal does. Teal basically means that you complete the map in half the time. Like, literally half the time. 2.5 minutes versus 5 minutes, although the total time to complete the map is about 5.5 minutes versus 8 minutes. Now, that's obviously because there is rolling the map, looting, all that sort of stuff. Yeah, looting takes around 2 minutes on its own. So, okay. Your maps are being cut down from 8 minutes to 5.5 minutes with Teal, but you have to do the encounter in half the time, right? Like, you're getting double spawns. The DPS requirement just goes way up if you're running triple Teal strategy, and, as I said, you gotta have a really good build. Now, that's 6.4 exalts profit per hour. This is kind of the minimum if you're gonna be running this content, right? If you want to run this difficult content, instead of just regular Blight maps, I'd say Amber, Teal, Opal is the minimum you need to go, right? Don't waste your time doing anything else. If you can't handle Amber, Teal, Opal, just do Opal on Blight maps, right? You're not... It's not that much less profit per hour, but it's a hell of a lot easier for you, right? It's a hell of a lot easier. And, yeah. I would really recommend it. If you can't do it at least Amber, Teal, Opal, don't bother doing Blight-Ravaged maps. And then obviously the step up from that, the hardest level of difficulty is going Crimson, Teal, Opal. So right, this one is replacing Amber with Crimson. That's something like I think it's like 75 lucky chests. Although with the Awakening bonus, it gets amplified to like 96 or something. At this point, every single chest on your map is lucky. You're even getting more lucky chests than maps are spawning, but that's totally okay. You may want to substitute, if you feel like you're potentially wasting chests, which I don't think you really are, but you could go Violet, Teal, Opal too. You'd get very similar returns. All right, as you can see here, Violet, Teal, Opal is 7.8, and because this number was sort of extrapolated and not actually physically tested, you're probably going to find that these two numbers are a lot closer to each other than, what it's appearing here, right? Although they are already close. So, basically, it's getting rid of the Amber. It's the Amber, Teal, Opal strategy. It's slightly more rewarding, but you get to use a quarter of the towers. It's a lot harder. It's actually some of the hardest content in all of Path of Exile, right? yeah, it's really hard. There are people who are able to do Wave 30 Simulacrum that can't do Crimson Teal Opal reliably without failing a few maps here and there. And obviously it goes without saying for all this, and it really does need to be said because I initially tested it without doing this, and a lot of other people thought that was okay. And it was only when I did the later on testing that I sort of figured out that it was a mistake. But you have to be corrupting, you have to be alking and corrupting all your maps. The extra quant is adding extra chests, and more importantly, corrupting is obviously adding the chance for tainted oil into your maps. Now, if tainted oil is dropping 1 every 10 maps, it's an extra exalt every 10 maps. Or, you know, it's 1 exalt extra per hour just from corrupting your maps. Now, here's the thing, though. Corrupting has a chance to give you an 8 mod map, right? Even if you're running them scoured and corrupting them scoured because you just want to cheat your way into the tainted oil, you run the risk of getting the full 8 mods, and getting some mods are pretty hard for yourself. So you may as well just have a build that can do that level of content, right? You don't want to risk corrupting it and bricking the map. If you corrupt it and you get the worst case scenario of 8 mods, you want to still be able to do that content. Otherwise, just do a weaker anoint, do the Amber Teal Opal, something you can actually handle, right? So that would be my advice there. Don't go doing Crimson Teal Opal on a scoured map and corrupting it for the tainted oil, and then, you gotta throw away, 1 in however many maps because they turn into 8 mods. If you can't do it out and corrupted, just go down the next tier of difficulty, work your way down this list here. Yeah, that's all there is to it. But yeah, you have to be corrupting your maps, right? So corrupting your maps is like an extra exalt per hour, roughly, and if you can't corrupt your maps, again, just go do regular Blight maps, because, you can corrupt your Opal maps when you're doing regular Blight maps, no problems, right? Like, if you take 1 exalt away from these per hour, suddenly the strat's a lot weaker, and it's a lot harder for no reason. Yeah, just don't be afraid to run regular Blight maps instead of Blight-Ravaged maps if your build can't handle it. If you're going to be doing Blight-Ravaged maps, you need to make them hard, and you need to corrupt them and make them even harder, and otherwise it's just not worth it. Like, I really have to stress, Blight-Ravaged maps exist for people who enjoy Blight maps, but also have a really cracked out build. A build that can really handle some of the most difficult content. And if you can't, you don't have any business doing it. But that's okay, because regular Blight maps are still pretty good. So to wrap up, we're going to be talking about the tower strategies, and there's not really much to say here. It's very straightforward, surprisingly, but these are the only 4 types of towers you're going to care about at all. You're going to be anointing both your rings with Empowering Towers have 25% increased effect. That's going to give you 50% increased effect of Empowering Towers, which basically means the rank 3 Empowering Tower is going to be like giga buffing all the other towers. And what you're going to be doing is building clusters of Seismic Towers at rank 3. You're not going to upgrade them to any of the rank 4 options. You're going to keep them at rank 3, and then put an Empowering Tower in the middle of the cluster, so it just buffs all of them at the one time, and basically that's going to result in perma-stunning most mobs that aren't stun immune. Now, there are going to be Seismic immune mobs, and they're just going to go through, like, without any problems. And that's why you have to have the DPS requirement, because something's going to get through this cheesy strategy, and you have to deal with them yourself. But, yeah. And now, the other reason you have to have the DPS requirement, also, I think I mentioned this before, is because when you move too far away, the towers don't work, but the mobs still keep moving. So, obviously, if you're setting up towers on one end, mobs are still getting through on the other end, even though you have all your towers built. So, it's sort of perfect strategy, but yeah. Now, Glacial Cage is the next thing you need to know. Now, this is the Ice Tower upgraded to rank 4. Glacial Cage is one of the options. And all this does is it puts, like, this ring of frost around a mob or around a group of mobs, and they can't leave. It's really important to put lots of Glacial Cage towers around your Blight Pump. This is going to be like a sort of last line of defense for things that get through all of your other towers. It's going to freeze them in place and hold them there, and that's going to tell you need to focus the things inside those Glacial Cages. And finally is an Imbuing Tower. So the Imbuing Tower, it just increases... I believe it just buffs attack speed and cast speed. It might buff your damage. I don't think it does, though. I think it's just attack and cast speed. And you want to also have an Empowering Tower in range, because the Empowering Tower also buffs this attack speed buff by 50%. So on your Blight Pump, you want to have an Imbuing Tower, a whole bunch of Glacial Cage towers, right? So that you can sort of make your last stand against things that are getting through. And then you want to put an Empowering Tower. I'm going to show you what it looks like. Okay, so imagine this yellow line is just a lane. you're going to have your clusters of seismic towers over here, and then you're going to have empowering towers in between the middle of them. That's going to make sure that all of these seismic towers are sort of like a perma-stunning. Now, around your Blight Pump, you're going to have Glacial Cage towers protecting you from all angles. Obviously, things are going to be coming from all directions, and you want to have the Glacial Cages in every direction. You also want to have the Imbuing, the one that buffs you and gives you extra attack speed or cast speed, and then you want to have your Empowering Tower in between them all to make them all more effective, right? So, the Tier 3 Empowering Tower, obviously, you just put it in between all your other towers. That's all you need to know. It just buffs everything that's nearby. And yeah, and then you also want to have some Glacial Cages sprinkled around the rest of your thing, just for the things that are, you know, seismic immune. Now, obviously, the Glacial Cage will catch them. It's going to slow them down. It's going to buy you a lot of extra time, and especially when you're doing triple teal, things are coming at you, like, from all angles really fast. You are getting absolutely gangbanged, and it's not pretty. It's really not pretty. So, yeah, you really need these Glacial Cages to sort of help out and take the edge off. If you start getting seismic immune bosses coming from both directions, Glacial Cage towers are the only thing that's going to be the difference between failing and succeeding in that map. So, you know, don't neglect them. And one final thing, don't overbuild, right? I know it's tempting at the start. When the Blight map starts, you only get to really deal with like 1 or 2 lanes, and they're usually pretty much in the same direction. It's very tempting to build 100 towers in that one direction, right? Because then you're probably thinking like, okay, everything on this side is completely dealt with. The thing is, when you're running triple teal, like 10 to 20 seconds into the encounter, the lane on the total opposite side of the Blight Pump's going to open up, and mobs are going to come flooding through, right? So just set up some towers on the first lane that's available, and be prepared to rush over as soon as possible to all the new lanes that are opening up, because you need to get these towers down ASAP. Now, once all these towers are down and the triple teal is spawning in mobs at twice the speed, you're going to be 1 FPS gaming in most cases, right? Especially if you're playing a poison build like I am. 1 FPS, right? And that means that if your towers aren't already built, you're going to have a very hard time building more, right? So you need to make sure you get your towers out as soon as possible before the FPS crashes, and especially before you are pushed all the way back to the Blight Pump. In about half of these maps, I am just permanently at the Blight Pump, spamming my main skill, and I'm just permanently inches away from failing the map, and I always squeak by just, you know, by literal inches, right? Now, you can body block a lot of bosses, and you really shouldn't have a squishy character, because something that's going to save a lot of your maps is just body blocking the mobs. Especially Blight bosses, they will stop and just try and attack you and kill you. And if you are tanky enough to tank them, you can tank them for like literally forever. They won't go anywhere. They're just going to sit there continuing to try and kill you. And if they can't kill you, they can't progress, and yeah. Now, obviously, that strat is not perfect, because when you have bosses coming in from every angle, you can't block them all, you're gonna die, right? So you still need to have a character that has, you know, tens of millions of DPS, you know. I really would recommend 30 million serious DPS as a minimum if you want to do this content, you know, juiced out of its mind, the way I would recommend running it. But yeah. Have a character that, you know, 30 million DPS, but is still pretty tanky, can tank several hits from a boss, and can sustain between those hits, so that you can just keep taking the hits, right, as long as you need to in you know, very dire circumstances. And yeah, that's pretty much the strat, and that works most of the time, providing you are not overextending and doing some kind of dumb, you know, annoyance strat that you can't handle. You know, just, I really need to be clear. Most of you aren't going to be able to handle that really hard strat. So which one? This one? Crimson Teal Opal? Most of you can't handle it. I can't even do this reliably, you know, my current build, part of why I'm rerolling. But yeah, it's, if you can't do it, don't try. You're just going to lose money. You're going to waste your time. Don't do that, right? Just accept that you can't do it, and do Amber Teal Opal and refine that strat instead, right? I hope you guys found this video helpful. I'm going to try and get back to like my usual uploading schedule, where I'm putting out videos a little more regularly. Obviously all the league start drama kind of had me a little off my game, so I decided to sort of let things simmer down. But you know, we should get back to regular uploads, and I'm looking forward to uploading some content on my Arakali build, providing it goes well. If you don't see any content about my Arakali's Fang build, that's because I just wasted 500x re-rolling into a build I don't enjoy playing. So keep your eye out for that. That should be pretty interesting. But yeah, I guess I'll see you guys next time. If you liked this video, give me a like, comment, and subscribe. It really does help out with the algorithm, especially with all the hate I get lately. But yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one. Have a good one.